Hello and welcome to the new episode of Business and Law Uncovered. I'm Rion and I'm thrilled to have you join me today. We're diving into a significant legal battle involving Apple, where two different groups of law firms are competing to lead a massive consumer class action lawsuit. This case accuses Apple of monopolizing the smartphone market, and the outcome could have major implications for the technology sector and consumers alike. Make sure to stick around to the end to hear my opinion on this matter. So let's get into the details. So, Apple is headquartered in Cupertino, California, that's up north in Bay Area, and it is one of the world's largest and most influential technology companies. Its iPhones, iPads, and Mac computers are in the global market, and its App Store serves as a critical gateway for developers looking to reach millions of users on specific apps or games or just anything created to be put on there. However, this dominance has raised serious questions about whether Apple's practices limit competition and restrict consumer choice. The current wave of lawsuits against Apple stems from a broader investigation led by the U.S. Justice Department, or also the DOJ, and a numerous amount of states. In March, they filed a major antitrust lawsuit against Apple, accusing the company of using its market power to stifle competition and force developers into contracts that serve into Apple's interests at the expense of others. So basically, what is happening is that since they're so large, they're just bullying a bunch of these developers into helping Apple by essentially um, providing extra games or extra code or anything extra to help develop Apple's technology. And the reason these developers have to do it is because they have no other choice. There's no other company large enough like Apple. And so Apple basically just squashes the competition. And now consumer choice isn't very diverse. It's just between one or two or three companies, basically, in the phone market. I would guess probably Apple, Samsung, and Google Pixel. I would guess those are the top three. Not completely sure, but I'm guessing that's what has been going on. How Apple just crushed the rest of the competition, and now it's just mainly Apple globally. And from this, it looks like they're the bully. But at the heart of these lawsuits are claims that Apple has established significant roadblocks that diminish consumer choice. Specifically, the lawsuits allege that Apple's contractual restrictions on developers prevent them from offering their services through third party platforms or at a competitive price. This in turn limits the options available to consumers and ensures that Apple maintains a dominant position in the market. So, like I said before, they're just bullying developers to basically help them and offer their services um, rather than for a higher price or competitive prices, like I said. So, for example, Apple's App Store policy requires its developers to use Apple's payment system for the in app purchases, which often includes a commission up to 30%. And developers are also prohibited from directing users to alternate payment methods like Google Pay or PayPal or like any of these other large payments, like maybe Square. So even if those methods could be cheaper, or more convenient for the consumers, Apple wants and needs them to use Apple Pay to help promote the product, or, yeah, basically, generally the product. So critics argue that these policies not only inflate prices, but also suppress innovation by discouraging developers from exploring alternative business models. Apple has consistently denied these allegations. The company argues that its policies are designed to protect user privacy and security, ensuring that apps on the App Store meet high standards. Apple contends that its rules create a safer and more trustworthy environment for both developers and consumers. And in one way, if you look at it, this seems like they're not doing anything wrong. They don't want any hacking from credit card information, no identity theft from third party platforms. But if you really look closer, Apple's just trying to promote Apple Pay, its own software. It's not letting, otherwise, it would let these developers use another safe business model of payments. So the legal battle has escalated as various law firms have filed antitrust lawsuits against Apple, seeking to represent consumers who believe that they have been harmed in the company's practices. These lawsuits are collectively known as class actions, where a group of people with similar grievances join together and sue a defendant, being the defendant is Apple. And in the current situation, the two law firms are competing for the opportunity to lead these class actions, and the stakes are incredibly high. Whoever is appointed as lead counsel stands to gain a significant proportion of the legal fees if the case results in a settlement or favorable judgment. Given the potential for billions of dollars in damages, the competition to lead the case is fierce. On one side, the law firms Hagens, Berman, Sobel, Shapiro, Gerard Sharp, Seizure, Weiss, and Carella, Byrne, Sisecci, Brody, and Agnello are vying for the lead role. Sorry if I mispronounced any of these law firms. They sound very prestigious and hard to pronounce. Um, so they argue that their coalition is better equipped to handle the complexity and the scale of the case. They emphasize that the involvement of multiple firms will provide the resources and the expertise necessary to take on a company as powerful as Apple. On the other side, Housefield and Sussman Godfrey are pushing for a leaner leadership structure. They argue that having too many firms involved could lead into inefficiencies and unnecessary complications, which makes sense. Their proposal is to streamline the process by concentrating the leadership in smaller, more focused groups. They believe this approach will be more effective in managing the case and achieving a successful outcome for the plaintiffs. A third party law firm, including Schneider, Wallace, Cottrell, Konecki, and Berger Montag, has also expressed interest in leading a class of indirect purchasers, consumers who bought an iPhone from a mobile phone carrier rather than directly from Apple. This adds another layer of complexity to the proceedings. So basically, what's happening is uh, there's like 5 or 6 law firms that really need this leading role, and then there's like they're all competing for it, and then there's these two law firms, Hosfield and Sussman Godfrey, and they're pushing for a different type of structure. They want a smaller group to fight this legal action, which makes sense because with so many law firms, with like 8 or 9 law firms all working together, it can get really confusing. I would guess generally the most in a big case would probably be 3 or 4 for like just legal purposes and the funding. But I feel like 9 and 10 is way too much, even to take down such a big company like Apple, because their net worth is in the trillions. But still, even to take down such a big company, I don't think that they need so many law firms for this. It'll get very confusing. So, what was the court's rule? The decision on which law firm will lead the case lies with the U.S. District Judge Julian Niels in New Jersey. During recent court proceedings, both sides presented their arguments, emphasizing why their approach would be best to serve the interests of the consumers involved in the lawsuit. Judge Neal's decision will have a significant implication for the case. The chosen leadership team will not only guide the legal strategy, but will also control the negotiation process if a settlement has been reached. Given the high stakes and the involvement of major players in the legal field, the judge's ruling is highly anticipated. This case is part of a broader trend of increased scrutiny on big tech companies. In recent years, governments and regulators around the world have become more concerned about the influence of companies like Apple, Google, Amazon, and Facebook. These companies have been accused of engaging in practices that stifle competition, exploit consumers, and concentrate power in ways that harm society. The outcome of this case could have a far reaching consequence for Apple and the technology industry as a whole. If Apple is found to have violated antitrust laws, it could face significant fines, forced to change its whole business practice, and damage its reputation. Such a ruling could also embolden regulators and private litigants to pursue similar cases against giant tech companies. On the other hand, if Apple successfully defends itself from these allegations, it could strengthen its position in the market and set a precedent that also makes it difficult for more future antitrust claims to succeed. This would also reinforce the status quo, where a few large companies dominate key areas of the digital economy. So, in my view, the Apple's lawsuit highlights an important issue in the technology industry: the balance between the company power and the consumer rights. So, while Apple's policies are designed to ensure app quality and security, the restrictions imposed on developers raise valid concerns about market fairness and competition. If Apple is to be found engaging in monopolistic practices, it could lead to more equitable conditions for developers and consumers, fostering innovation and reducing prices. On the other hand, if if the company is able to maintain its practices, it could set a precedent that might basically it could set a precedent that might deter future regulatory actions. Overall, the outcome of this case could significantly influence how tech giants operate and how the regulations are shaped in the future. And that's why I believe that this lawsuit was good that it came up, because no matter whether Apple was found guilty or not, this will set a good precedent for later on whatever side to help the economy as a whole. The ongoing legal battle over Apple's alleged monopolistic practices is a complex and high stakes affair with the potential to reshape the landscape of the technology industry. So, as law firms jockey for the chance to lead the case, the broader implications of the lawsuit are becoming increasingly clear. Whether this case results in meaningful changes to Apple's business practices or solidifies its dominance, the outcome will closely be watched by consumers, developers, regulators, and competitors alike. This is a developing story, and the next steps in the legal process will be crucial in determining how this case unfolds. Keep an eye on the headlines, as this is a situation that could have a lasting impact on the future of technology and consumer choice. Thank you, and remember to tune in for my next podcast.